There is a fifth dimension.
About the unknown.
Beyond that which is known to man.
The Garden of Thought.
The Babylon Project was our last best hope for peace.
Unexplained.
Mythologies.
This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call
The Garden of Thought with Jeff Lippman.
Eventually, our sun will grow cold and go out.
Whether a thought is spoken or not, it is a real thing, and it has power.
It won't just take us. It'll take Marilyn Monroe, and Lao Tzu, and Einstein, and Morobuto,
The mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience.
all of this was for nothing. Unless we go to the stars.
Let's make sure that history never forgets the name.
The Garden of Thought.
Welcome everyone into Garden of Thought, and this week we're welcoming in Barry Walton. He is an Emmy Award winner. He is also the author of a book called The Unknown Adventurer, and it is basically an autobiography about him and his journeys, his adventures, but mostly his life journey, which is tied to his adventures in some ways, or maybe his adventures are tied to him. And we're going to do the best we can to sell this book without spoiling this book, while talking to Barry about Barry without giving away his entire life story. So with that, I'm going to start by welcoming in Barry Walton. How are you today?
Hey, I'm very good. Great introduction. I like the setup. Let's save the book for everyone to enjoy, and let's talk about other things that are entertaining. I'm all about it. Yeah, but I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and we found out some things in pre-production we could probably talk about if we needed to, but I don't think we're going to need to. But you've been in the entertainment field directly and indirectly in support and as a creator, and I do some entertainment law in the form of general IP law and also contracts, and so that pops up from time to time. But first of all, the book itself doesn't mention, or at least it doesn't really tell us where he got the Emmy. But I'm not spoiling anything, because on the cover it says Emmy Award winner above the title. And if you even just looked at the back, it's a picture of you, probably 12 years younger, holding an Emmy, looking happy, as you should after winning an Emmy. So let's start with this. You're actually our second our Emmy Award winner on this show. So I'm sort of excited about that. What did you win the Emmy for?
Well, this is interesting. It's funny that you kind of highlight that. It definitely is kind of like a little bit of a promotional for kind of like highlighting, as a credential at some level.
Yeah.
Skill set.
Who's this guy? Why should I buy his book?
Yeah, exactly. And the story arc, does get into films a little bit. But I had been working, and I just recently had a long discussion about the Emmy, and I'll come around to that point. But I had been working with the Detroit Pistons, and I had started creating a series of documentaries on a ton of different things for the Pistons. I did a whole series on the Bad Boys, and I did a series on Grant Hill, and I pitched and finally got approved. And this is all before Jordan released his kind of return called The Last Dance, and 30 for 30 released the Bad Boys series. And we were making this series, and I made one called Jordan Rules. And these things were just extremely popular pieces that were kind of the Pistons were getting 5,000 views on average, and these pieces were getting millions of views. And then in the process, I made the telling of the story of Kyle Singler and Kevin Love. Kyle Singler was a player from Duke who was drafted onto the Pistons. Kevin Love is more famous for his championship run with LeBron James. And the two of them grew up both in Oregon, and they battled it out for 3 years in a row in the Oregon State Championship. And Kevin had won, I think, 2 years. And then in the end, Kyle won in the final year, I think his senior year or their senior year. So I'd gone to I think Middleton, Oregon, and interviewed Kyle's family and captured all that, and it played on Fox Sports Detroit. And then we entered it in, and and to my surprise, I was super excited. I won that award, and I'm kind of a bashful person. It felt great to win it, but at the time I was just kind of like, I kind of took it for granted. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. It's become a bigger deal over time, and someone highlighted to me, Barry, it's not so much about the moment of winning it, because the moment of winning the award, it was cool, but it felt surreal, and I kind of was like, I'm all very critical of my work, so I kind of even sat there and was like, I don't know, did the work deserve it of my own experience? Although I thought the piece was great, but someone brought to my attention, Barry, it wasn't necessarily completely about the work. It was about all the years of work that it took to get to that moment, so that you could create something that people would appreciate. And then I became aware of like the power of that moment. And since then, it's obviously become a much more valuable commodity, and something I'm very proud to share with people.
Yeah, no, congratulations. I mean, that's terrific. Upon reading the book, I'm not really sure how to describe you. I've come upon two different variations of the same thing, and they're both going to seem trite and maybe even unfair to you. I hope not. But you are either the unluckiest lucky guy I've ever read about, or the luckiest unlucky guy I've ever read about. I'm just not quite sure which. I'm going to go with, because you have now an Emmy, going on the luckiest unlucky guy. But I think for a while it was a little bit touch or go there. And by a while, and I sort of lose track of the years, but a while, decade and a half there you were tripping the light fantastic a little bit.
Wait, clarify kind of what you mean by that. I'm curious what you mean in your observation, so I can understand better, so I can clarify.
Okay, so I'm trying not to. Again, I don't want to give away too much of the books, but there was sort of, first of all, you've been surrounded by loving family, but there's been a lot of misfortune, sort of close in your degrees of familyship. You flirted with homelessness a few times, but there always seemed to be something there available to you, which I think from the outside looking in might have been really cool, like living on a sailboat in the marina, or living at, on a bungalow or a cabin down in Central America. You had a job, and we're going to talk about that one. But you sort of were in a conflict. You sort of wanted to leave it to do something else, but you didn't want to lose the job. And as it turned out, it was only a temporary gig anyway, though you weren't really clear about that. So you never really had to make the choice. I mean, so, you seem to have tripped upwards a lot, but it wasn't straight. It's not like you kept, I don't know. That's, again, I don't want that to sound trite, but I also don't want to get into too many of the details, because, I mean, they've got to read your story, and we're sort of talking about your story.
And I think it's okay to kind of open up some of these things, because I think there's so much in this story, and there's and so I'm okay with kind of sharing some of these details, but I think what I'm hearing you say is probably pretty accurate when it comes to being the luckiest, maybe unlucky guy at some level. A lot of misfortune that turned out to be okay. And the book is a little bit about learning from mistakes and overcoming kind of hurdles in your life. And there's some philosophy in there. And part of me, when I started kind of responding to this question, the story of the famous Chinese proverb kind of came to mind, where it could be good, it could be bad, time will tell. Where the old man has a young son, and he falls and breaks his leg, and the village are like, "Oh my God, you're so unlucky." And then the general comes to take the boys to the military, but his son doesn't get taken to war because he's got a broken leg, and the whole town's like, "Oh, you're so lucky." And I'm hearing you say a little bit of that, where my misfortunes ended up working to my favor. And I would have to agree, probably that's the truth. And at times, I think part of this book was about recognizing my part in my misfortunes. I was born with a certain, a little bit of a learning disability. I struggled through school. I struggled with attention and with reading, and because of those things, in my early years, I had adopted a victim's mentality. I had accepted that maybe I just couldn't do that. Maybe I just wasn't capable. And I was a big risk taker, so often I would take huge leaps or huge risks in life. In my move to Los Angeles, or different when I moved even to Italy, kind of impulsively to live with my wife after knowing her for a very short time. And one of the premises of the book is like, I kept taking these risks and failing, and there came a turning point where I had to ask myself and look at myself directly and somewhat painfully and go, what part am I playing in my own failure? Am I sabotaging myself? Am I kind of where do I fit in this? And then accepting responsibility for it, and then driving forward. And I end the book kind of in the Himalayas and that experience, and I'm not 100% sure that my luck necessarily changed, or my lack of luck at some level. Because again, like you were mentioning, I had the work at the NHL, a job I loved. It was a contract. They warned me up front that you don't get comfortable, and it kind of and I'd hoped that if I worked hard enough, I'd win their favor, and I did not win their favor, and it happened to a lot of people, because they just turn and burn in those companies, so they don't have to cover healthcare. Every 6 months they turn over. And so,
yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, and we can do that later, certainly, because I think that would be shocking to most people, while at the same time, it makes the most sense in the world. You just think that some things, the money is too big, and it's to do that, but that's why the money's so big, because they are so draconian.
Yeah, no, I mean, I find I have a disdain for the corporate world. I've worked on my own I've started my own company 7 years ago, and I've been trying to get past a certain amount of that disdain, but I have a genuine disdain for the corporate world. It's a brutal. It is a brutal, and anyone who is listening to this and has not been burnt by the corporate world, it's only a matter of time. But yeah, no, that experience was, an eye-opening, and there's been so many experiences since then. But again, I finished the book in my finishing, pretty much when I finished my documentary. I had started working with the Pistons at the end there, and returned to Detroit, and it had, it was about creating the full circle, the full hero's journey. I had, returned, knowing a place again for the first time type experience. But yeah, no, my experience with the NHL, and I guess for your viewers, if I haven't been clear, I had a job working for the NHL as a show editor for NHL Live. And NHL Live aired, I think, 5 nights a week. And then through the season, I think it aired 7 nights. I mean, through the playoffs, it aired like 7 nights a week. So you would show up at 10 and you would work your tail off until 7 p.m. And you do that 5 to 7 nights a week in downtown Manhattan on 44th and Avenue of the Americas. It was a cool spot, though. My editing bay had a sliding door, and I could look out over Central Park, and I could, it was so awesome to kind of be part of that New York kind of minute experience. But when I walked in, the editor that was sitting at the desk and training me in said, "Don't get comfortable. When you finish your contract, they will terminate you, and it's nothing personal." And I worked so hard. I've never worked so hard in my life. I worked so hard that I ended up having some carpal tunnel, and I had to get like things on my hands, like braces. You know what I'm talking about? The braces on my hands, so that I could edit and keep up with the pace of editing because I was getting carpal tunnel in my hands. And I was killing it. The executive producer stopped by my office even a couple times and was like, "Nice show open." I would create these amazing show opens, but at the end, there was no emotion in it. It was your contract's up so well, and it was because of by law. And you probably can look this up, but they had, I think, 6 or 8 months before they had to pay health insurance for their employees and make them a permanent employee. And when you're a temporary employee, I think there's probably other breaks, maybe tax breaks in there or different things, but definitely benefits. They don't have to do benefits. And in New York. New York's New York. It's full of talent. I'm just one. I'm one in a million. Maybe I have that backwards. I'm one of a million. And so, yeah, that was kind of the case, and it was a bummer, but it did work out. I was able to go over and complete the documentary in the Himalayas, which again was another like miraculous coming together of I don't know, synchronicity, God, the universe. I have my own personal views, but I think different people have different takes on it.
Of course. By the way, I knew Long Beach, and I got a kick out of that because I'm a Limerick public school system kid. So I'm very familiar with Long Beach. It was right across Thixton Creek. I lived on Thixton Drive, which is this little dead-end street that juts out of basically the back nine of a golf course. And the reason why that's important is because the school district line goes through the golf course and terminates in the creek. And there's my little street that goes out. So my school, my grade school was a mile away. My middle school was like 2.5 miles away, and my high school was 3 miles away, which is not normal in New York. And it's because my little street that at the time had 5 houses on it and one house that was empty, which we thought was haunted, of course. It's now probably been renovated 16 times. I think actually by Tony Award winners at some point. Anyway, I could see Long Beach from across the way. So there is that, but we're not going to play New York geography at this moment, or do you know, or anything like that. There were a few times in this book where I thought this might be where he just ends, and I knew it wasn't because it says Emmy Award winner, and we hadn't talked about an Emmy yet or anything even close to approaching an Emmy. And there were a few times in this book where I think I probably would have made either the wrong decision or a different decision and just sort of packed it in, which is sort of a tribute to me. I'm naturally lazy. I mean, I probably wouldn't have been in those places because you can't be lazy and get to all of what you were doing. But when you were in that area, and it almost was like it was almost like an oasis at the time. I think it was in Mexico, and you found this village where people basically lived off of mako sharks. They were hunting mako sharks. They were using every part of the mako shark for their own living, and I presume they would make necklaces and sell skulls and whatever it is. But you actually, it was too short because you seemed happy there, and I felt like I wouldn't have. If I hadn't already known that wasn't the end and it wasn't like page 100, and there was a lot more pages. I wouldn't have been surprised if in another book it would have said, "And I lived happily ever after," because it seemed like that was like your respite. That you seemed happy there. How close to mako sharks did you get? Did you dive? Did you hunt mako sharks? Is that scary? Is it dangerous? Does it just after a few weeks become your normal? Tell me about sharks.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny that you talk about the Baja. It's funny that you said I was happy down there. Then I'll come. I don't have a ton on. I'll update on the sharks in particular. Sure. These individuals. But first, to talk to the point about happiness. I do think I find myself the happiest when I am kind of the furthest away from society, in a sense. I don't really know what that is, and I think it would be great, and maybe someday it will end. My story will end. My personal story will end with me in kind of one of those distant places, as far away from society as possible. But I've got this nagging angst about like needing to achieve things in life, probably from those deep insecurities from youth, that keeps me like departing from places that probably I ought to just settle. So I think there's probably some truth to that. And it's interesting. It's always interesting to hear like your take or other readers' take on this, because when I'm writing it, it's a completely different experience of what I'm putting. But then I'm hearing you talk about it, and I'm fascinated. The Mako guys were what it was technically. Okay, well there was a lot of villages down in Baja, and if anyone knows the peninsula of Baja, which is a lot sketchier now than it was 15 years ago when we were doing it. So I'm not recommending this trip, which is a shame, because I literally think the Baja Peninsula might be one of the most beautiful sections of coast in the world that I've visited. I've been to places there that nothing I can compare to nothing. Literally beaches where no one has harvested the shells, and because no one has harvested the shells, you can see the progression of how a beach is made, because the lower grains are this white classic sand that we all know as a beach, and as you go up the beach, the grains slowly get bigger and bigger and bigger, and by the top of the beach, it is literally a mile of shells that are deposited by the ocean.
Right.
And the ocean is just working them into a beach. And, I don't know if every beach in the world was formed this way, probably not, volcanic in different ways, but in this particular beach, fascinating. But I kind of digress. We had been to a bunch of different villages. There were some villages that lived similar to how you speak. And in fact, they were so isolated and so separated from society. I often question how they survived without getting fish, because there wasn't much down there. They had to drive for, several hours to get gas or anything. And they just kind of lived in these small communes. But in particular, the shark fishermen, they were off of Magdalena Bay down, and there was a little peninsula, and 3 men lived in what looked like a bombed out shelter. No roof. It only had cinder block, and it looks like someone had used the cinder block house for target practice, because it had a bunch of holes
Right.
in it. But we didn't even know these guys were there. We went to this island, and we stumbled across them. And they took us to this net where they had laid out the parts of the fish, and they had literally cut up every slice of these Mako sharks, from the fins to the teeth to the jaws to everything they could sell or pack in salt. They did. And what they would do is they'd hop in skiffs that are about 20 feet long, which is small in the boating world, made of fiberglass and kind of maybe a foam plastic material. And they would charge out in the ocean literally 20 miles, which is in the Pacific, in any ocean, but the Pacific's a big ocean, and it has huge swells. That's risky in an open boat 20 miles out to sea. And they hang these chains and they catch them. We didn't, unfortunately, we didn't get to go out with them. We had talked about going out with them. We never did go out with them. And the documentary that I made that coincides with this part of the book, which, not to promote too much, but is on Amazon Prime, called Reaching Reality, and has these scenes in it. So you can go literally and see the scenes from the book. You can go see a lot of the scenes from the book in 3 of the documentaries that I made: the Reaching Reality, the High, and Ultra High. They're all on Amazon Prime. But anyways, this in particular was kind of, that was how these guys were. They were fascinating. They were very hardened. They would run the boat into Ensenada, sell everything, and come back out to this peninsula, and that's how. There were several stories like that of how people made their money out there. It was just, and that's probably the other reason I didn't, even though I was happy, I didn't stop, because you're going to have to live off the land. You know what I mean? You're going to have to learn. I grew up soft compared to these people.
That's right.
And so, yeah, that's kind of the story of those guys, though.
That's cool. I probably should say that Barry was a surfer, and so a lot of these adventures were, have surfing involved in them as well, off and on, and sometimes trying to find on. It's interesting how you describe surfing. It's almost like it was how I hear some people talk about like psilocybin or whatever. It's like sort of like you're at the top of the world, and you've actually been near the top of the world. But it was like a sense of euphoria and all of that, which is, I'm too clumsy to have ever surfed. And of course I didn't try hard enough to do it. I mean, I couldn't even do what was the thing with the people they stand on a surfboard and they basically canoe paddle themselves around, or whatever that's called. I couldn't.
That's probably harder. Paddleboarding, or they call it a sup.
Well,
stand up paddleboard.
Yeah, I couldn't do that.
That's probably hard. That's probably harder than surfing because you have to build the momentum.
Well, I feel better now, but I don't think I ever had sustained momentum on that for maybe more than 20 seconds might be my record on that. All right, we're jumping around a lot. You're on a beach. You see a girl. She's with some friends. She sees you. It looks okay, and you're like, I could probably use some company around now. And you pass, and you just sort of say, I could tell that was the wrong kind of girl with me. Now, me, in that situation, I would have been hungry like the wolf. I'm sure I would have made that decision, right or wrong. But why did you know that she was the wrong girl for you?
Well, the setup to the story is probably, a big part of that piece. Because I'd gone through a really rough experience in my life. And I had spent a lot of, by the way, I was 34 at the time. I'd spent a lot of years chasing my tail and chasing kind of pointless relationships. And I think there comes a point in, I can't say every man's life, but most men's life, when you kind of decide like, you know what, the game is fun, but there's a time when it's time to kind of pack it in and maybe retire from the game in a sense. The game meaning like chasing women. Gotcha. And how did I know that particular? I guess it was more just the setting. I'd gone out that night. I'd been out on a major adventure the day before. I'd gone out. I met this girl in a bar, and she had somebody else. She had another boyfriend, and she had kind of alluded to that, and I got this sense that like. She couldn't do anything that night, but the next day, if I met her, she could be in a spot where like she's not in public, right? She's a Costa Rican girl, she's a local girl, so whoever her boyfriend was, she was in a public place that she couldn't meet up. So I knew that when the next day, when I kind of was heading to go find her in our agreed upon rendezvous spot, that I kind of knew what I was getting into. I was playing the game with a woman who's already committed to someone else.
Right, so in another country. You didn't want to be the star of an Elmore Leonard book.
I'd been there. I'd been there. I'd done that kind of stuff. You know where it ends. I mean, if you've done it enough, the old saying, and I put this in the book.
Sure, it ends with Danny Trejo and a machete.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kidding. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. You don't have to. You don't need to apologize. I like the interjection. That's far better than what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. Well, you can use it. We'll let it out. Pretend you said it. No, I'm kidding.
No, I like it. I like it.
It was just interesting to me because it wasn't that much longer in the book. Now, how many days passed? I don't remember, and I'm not sure it was entirely clear. That you didn't have a terribly dissimilar situation, and that was, the game's afoot, all systems go. Now, maybe it was an entirely different look, a different vibe, different nerves. Instead of the hackles on the back of your neck going up, you got tingles and the goosebumps on your forearms. Maybe it was just there was no boyfriend involved, or at least not one alluded to day one saying, hey, when we're not here, we can get together, But I don't know. It's like, one, your instincts told you was wrong. The other, your instincts told you was right. Spoiler, it turned out to be right. And it's not double spoiler because we're going to talk a little bit more about, I don't want to say it, her. We're going to call it her. How do you know the difference at the time? How did your body or your brain tell you that something's different here?
I think there's so much nuance to this story. There's so much to learn, and so I have no problem kind of like sharing it somewhat openly, because I think that anyone who reads the book is going to take so much more away than what we could possibly offer. But with regard to my meeting my wife on the beach, who I had only known for maybe 8 hours, there's one thing that I knew that I had weaknesses at an early age, academically, but there's one thing that I've always had that may be a counter to that weakness, in a sense, maybe my gift or my superpower, and that is intuition. I have always had superior intuition and a sense of who a person is and what I'm dealing with, far beyond kind of most of my peers or friends. I have lots of friends that are far more intelligent than me, but sometimes their intuition and their judgment of people seems pretty poor, and I'm always like, how do you not see that? And I genuinely think it's because some people have that kind of gift. When I met my wife, there was a genuine connection. I've gone off of this kind of intuition through a lot of my life, and a lot of the decisions I make in the book are built upon that. But when I met my wife, it was the right spot, the right time. So timing was right. I'm a patterns person. I think patterns are a big deal. So it was the right spot, the right time. We connected well, and we weren't even versed extremely well in each other's language. We were kind of meeting someplace in the middle, someplace between Spanish and English, and who knows what.
Portuguese.
But I genuinely had a very good sense and a good feeling about it. And then she disappeared. I invited her to come back to where I was staying, and she disappeared, which made it more attractive. So I decided that I was going to go find her in Italy. So and I went to Italy for 12 days. I think it was 12 days, or maybe it was 7 days prior to moving.
Both are magic numbers.
Yeah. No, it was prior to going there. I went and we spent a decent amount of time together. So even though I was kind of thunderstruck or awestruck or whatever, I did still kind of go over there and go, let me just double check. Let me make sure. And then after being there for, I think it was 12 days for some reason. I don't know why. But after being there for a decent amount of time, I said, okay, what if I move here? And the rest you'll have to read about.
Right. It's just an old-fashioned love story, except it's not that old. And it's not the current fashion. All right. I think you might have spoiled this a little bit, but I have to talk to this because at some point it became clear to you that in the most benign way possible, but you were sort of married to the mob. And, it seemed like a good thing, very generous and all that they even offered you to run some restaurants and things of that nature. Again, I think lazy Jeff, if so much fortune got me away, I probably would have been an offer I couldn't refuse, but you refused it.
It was an offer I couldn't refuse, man. What are you kidding me?
Yet you did.
Well, I mean, I'm married, so
but
I haven't gone. You know what? The old saying is, once you're in, you never get out.
Right. Well, that's what I was wondering. Has there been any? I mean, you didn't talk about it all, so I'm guessing the answer is no. But are you allowed to go back there? Without somebody, maybe not being so happy with you, or it seemed like that you had the blessing, but as part of you worried, maybe I insulted him. Maybe he was doing me a big favor. I'm going to let you tell it.
No, look, I think it's fascinating. Americans don't really understand this in our culture. I've told this story to so many Americans as a party story or different like coffee table story. and the response is kind of like one of like, huh? And so I want to kind of like walk this line cautiously because, but it in reality, so it wasn't, the reality of the situation was, what I wasn't dealing with Al Capone, you know what I mean? I wasn't dealing with the Godfather. I was probably dealing more accurately with nepotism, and which is deep, runs deep within Italian culture, deep. It's and can be mistaken for the mafia.
Well, you didn't have to pay your grocery bills at times. I mean, you walked into stores and they said nothing. I mean, that doesn't sound like nepotism.
Taken care of. You're in the family. When you're in the family, you're very well taken care of. I mean,
you sound like you're a street smart guy, and you were living it. So I don't want to doubt you, but it sounds like maybe you put blinders on this one. I don't know. Maybe I've just seen too many movies.
Well, no, I'll clarify. Everyone has. There's a famous saying in Italy that Italians don't like to talk about this, and the biggest issue that the police have in investigating the issues with the Italian mafia in Italy is that Italians won't talk about it. But it's part of what you're saying. It is a little bit of a scales on your eyes. Now, so what I was initially going to say, and I say it cautiously because I get this stare sometimes from Americans. When we think of mafia, we think of Al Pacino. We think of, the moment that you were kind of explaining, but we also think of the Donnie Brascos, like cut them up, stick them in the trunk, and take them out and bury them. You know what I mean? I think, in Italy, that's not it's still part of the culture, but the mafia is so pervasive throughout Italian culture in a way that I can't completely explain unless you understood it. But when I first entered Italy, I would say to my wife, what is mafia? And she's like, the Pope is mafia. So the supreme power in the state of Italy is mafia. And then she would say, she didn't want to stay there because, you can't get a job. You can't borrow money. You can't start a business. You can't do anything without going through the mob in Italy. This is just a fact. This is a fact. Don't kid yourself if someone tells you differently. It's not true. You'll never move up in Italian culture. You'll never climb the ladder like we do in America. This idea of kind of our ability, our self-determination to make something for ourselves. You'll never get there without going through some channel of the mafia. And then in the same note, I would say of Angelo, who was her mom's very wealthy companion. Mind you, it wasn't her mom's husband. Right. Her father had passed of a heart attack. Her mom had kind of been dating Angelo for a decade. Angelo was someone you couldn't get rid of once he came around. And I would say about Angelo, he was a very wealthy businessman, had like 4 or 5 businesses. Is Angelo mafia? And my wife would say, no, Angelo's not mafia. So we've been married for 15 years. If I asked my wife that same question today, she would give me the same answer. When I know that he's tied to the mafia.
Okay.
So that's how deep it runs. You'll never understand it. I don't understand it. But it wasn't throw me in the trunk type thing. I was in the family. If you're in the family, you're taken care of. If you're it's not like we think in America. And it makes sense because Italians are a very old culture, and they've gone through multiple ages, poverty, famine, disease, empires rising and falling,
volcanoes
to destroy them, and they have remained intact and survived. You don't do that. You don't make it. You don't have the eternal city. You're not around here for that long without a certain amount of skills of knowing how to take care of your own. So there's something there that we all like to romanticize and or associate with criminal behavior that is deeper than both of that. And it's actually like self-preservation. And so for me, now listen, if I divorced Stefania, they don't give a fuck. I would be a dead man. Excuse my French. I hope I could swear on the shoot.
You can
bleep that out. I would be a dead.
Oh no, we're not bleeping it out. We're leaving that in.
I would not be dead, literally.
Uh-huh.
Let me clarify.
Okay, no one's murdering you.
No one. I'm not dead. I'd be dead to them.
Right.
No one's doing me any favors.
You're shunned.
Only because I was married to Stefania.
Right.
It was only because I was married to Stefania. And they were only helping me out because they wanted to help Stefania out. Plus, they didn't want us to leave. But Stefania, she had grown up in that. She knew it, and she believed in the American dream. And she wanted the American dream for herself. And God bless her. She's worked super hard, harder than me. She's an immigrant, and she's worked harder than me to kind of achieve a lot. And she's pushed me along the way. Probably a lot of what I have is because of her. So yeah, but that kind of is that's kind of the long and the short of it. That's, it's still a fun ride. When I go over there, I still dig up Angelo. I still go hang out with him, but he's getting older. He's quite a bit older, and he's not as healthy as he used to be. And him and Anna kind of don't see each other as much because for their age primarily.
Right.
So it's not what it was, but those years were.
They entered the Ricky and Lucy phase of their bedroom.
Yeah. I love it, dude. That's awesome. That's exactly right.
Yeah, but true story.
It's a great segue.
My maternal grandparents had separate beds. You're a kid. Nothing seems unusual to you. It just is what it is. You go there, they're in separate beds. My parents had one bed. My paternal grandparents had one bed. They had two beds. I don't know. I Love Lucy was on. They had two beds. Whatever. Some people do some things. Others, I mean, you don't even have a concept of what the bed is for, other than sleeping or jumping up and down and throwing stuffed animals. And then later in life, I'm like, that's a little weird. I mean, it's still in their 50s at that point, when we're that little. Anyway, enough about that. It's not about me. It's about you.
I know it's a sidebar, but we obviously still sleep in the same bed. But I'm a horrible sleeper, meaning 2 or 3 nights a week I wake up at 2 a.m. and I get up and maybe I'll come back and lay down. And on those nights I'll wake my wife up. She drives her nuts. And I could see myself being like 70 or 75. And if I continue to be a shitty sleeper, my wife going, just sleep. Just sleep in the other room.
Well, I have two solutions for that. One is that, and Italian is Latin, but it's not Latino. My wife is Latino. And there are things at the Latino store which would be illegal in the drugstore in the same, down the street. But somehow Latino stores you're immune. And I imagine that there's other types of markets that you could go to a Caribbean store, an African store, or certain Asian stores, whatever. I mean, I guess, maybe not. Maybe it's just the magic of Latino stores. Anyway, she has something called Washanda, and it works 100% on me. The other thing I would do is I would do what you did. I would go out and I'd put on YouTube. And I put on something that I was titularly interested in, but I knew was boring. So I'd put something in like, what happened to the 12 tribes of Ishmael? So I put that on with the intent of watching it, but knowing that I wouldn't make it past the third tribe. And so that's what I do. I, put on like, one of those tutorials. Worst case is I listen to the whole thing. I'd learn something, or at least learn what that YouTube independent researcher, maybe a PhD, maybe not, told me about the 12 tribes, or, the Canaanite gods, or, Kemet, or whatever. And then I go back and I go to sleep. I have a really frivolous question, but it's very important to me. And it involves Angelo and everyone there in Italy. And that is a lot of wine drinking. What was the favorite, best red wines? Because this is what I want to know. I want to know what kind of wines the Italians really drink, and if any of it makes its way over to America. Because I don't drink a lot, but when I do, I don't want to waste my time on garbage.
Oh man, I tell you, I think for me, it's not. I'm not going to score you any new insights into wines, other than Angelo used to bring his own wine.
Mm-hmm.
And
Like he made it?
At the table. Yeah, he would bring his own family.
Oh, wow.
He'd bring his own family. And every year they would harvest their own olives, and they would make their own olive oil.
Of course.
So, oh, dude, the food over the cheese. I sometimes I can't believe I ever left. I had a deep attachment to my desire to get back to my career, and of course, my family. I'd like to I wanted to live closer to them, which that was between the two of us, so it wasn't fair. It could have gone either way, but the food was incredible. The wine, for me, I like a Chianti for the most part, and I don't I unfortunately wish if you had prepped me, I would have brought some names, but I didn't. I wasn't prepared for this one, and I don't have the greatest memory. But the best part was Angelo. He'd show up with his own wine in a big bottle. He'd bring it every time we'd have lunch, and we would just slice fresh sausage that he would buy. He would buy the pig from Abruzzo. We would go to his butcher. I've never seen something so amazing as watching a professional butcher cut a pig up piece by piece. He just knew every piece of meat. He just sliced it up in the most amazing fashion, and then he would go and grind up that fresh sausage, and we would throw that on. It's like butter. A good sausage. You kind of crack it open from the intestine skin, and you spread it across a nice piece of bread with olive oil on the bread. Oh my gosh! And then some wine. Anyways, but unfortunately, I don't have any labels for you.
Well, what varietal was it? You said you like Chianti, but was it Chianti? Were you in Tuscany? Was it more of a Amarone, a Barolo? I mean, or did he just say this is my wine and it escapes definition?
Oh, I'm just not versed enough, I guess, is probably the biggest issue.
Sangiovese.
You are next level with you. Have you seen Mondavi? Mondavi, I think is the name of the documentary.
Oh, have I seen it? No, I thought you meant the wine. Yeah, I split a case of Opus One once with a friend of mine. That was great. That's when I had money.
Oh yeah, that I'm sure that was amazing. Most of my experiences over there were home. A lot of that stuff, my favorite experiences were just homemade. Like people would just pull out a bottle with no label on it, nothing. It was just like pouring it, and everyone's drinking from it. And then lots of times it was the same way with the liquors too. A lot of the liquors were homemade. Grappa was homemade. Those experiences. That's the one thing that I don't know if it's unique to all of Europe. I gather that it's unique from Southern Europe, meaning Italy and Spain and France. But I was just fascinated by how much they still have maintained kind of their connection with the process of making food, which kind of was enlightening for me, especially when I came back to America, and I was like, geez, we eat we eat cardboard over here. I mean, the stuff when it comes to flavor and texture, it completely destroyed me. I've never really recovered from it, but yeah, I unfortunately I don't have I wish I had more recommendations for you. I hate to disappoint.
That's all right. You have my email, so if it comes to you, you figure it out, or you discover that there's something that's close that you pick up at the wine store and say, Jeff, I thought of you when I picked this up. It's a Beaujolais or whatever. All right. So at some point, again, you sort of got lucky. You got home. You're like, want a job. You're sort of toying with the idea of moving back home. Moving back home is the Heartland, Michigan. Of course, I want to talk about Grosse Pointe Blank or whatever. And there's a job with the NBA. Lo and behold, you get it. And my first question was, listen, they're entirely two different things, I suppose. But my first question is, how do you know it's going to be any different than the NHL?
With the Pistons. Well, it wasn't a short-term contract.
Okay.
It was long-term employment, gainful employment, or whatever the term might be. That being said, pro sports is brutal. I had my stint in pro sports. I have a comedy routine that a friend of mine has long been encouraging me to tell about one of my most famous moments in working in the corporate headquarters of pro sports, which was walking. I had a colleague. I'll tell this for the first time. We'll see how it goes over.
Okay.
I had a colleague and I who had not seen eye to eye, and they had put us both in charge of the same department. Which, if you're ever a leader of a company, do not put two opposing competitive individuals in charge of the same department and divide the workforce between them.
Right.
It's a horrible management technique. You just set people up for failure. This guy wouldn't work with me, and I tried to keep teaming with him. And I remember one day we were standing in. You could go into the palace. We worked in the Palace of Auburn Hills before they knocked it down. And you could go into the palace, and you could go upstairs, and they had a restaurant with pizza, and we were standing, and I happened to be standing next to him, and I said something effective. How come you won't ever work with me? And he said I don't know if cussing's okay on your show, but he basically was.
You already dropped one F-bomb. Go ahead.
He was an asshole to me. And I turned to him, and I've got a kind of a short fuse, and I sometimes say things I regret. In this case, it was the case, and I said, dude, I'd like to kick your ass. That's what I said. And he goes, okay, let's do it. After this moment initiated probably some of the dumbest events that ever occurred in my life, and I'm going to divulge them to you and your audience for the first time.
I get a surprising amount of breaking news on this show. I'm an untrained interviewer, but I think maybe that works to my advantage.
Yeah, well, it might be. So we start to head out of the palace. We go down a flight of stairs. We're still talking trash to each other.
Right.
I make the mistake of touching him.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out while we're going down the stairs, and I touched him, pushed him in the back. And he turns to me and he goes, now you did it. Now either you fight me or I'm going to HR and reporting that you touched me. Right? I got a wife at home. She's 6 months pregnant. This is a true story. 6 or 7 months pregnant. I remember sitting at my desk and contemplating what my options were. If this guy goes to HR, this turns into I end up turning into just getting destroyed and probably written up and maybe even relieved. And just looking like an asshole. Because I've seen them walk people out of this facility. By the way, you have to imagine maybe the most toxic corporate culture that you can imagine. Tom Gores was the owner, and this guy, some of the stuff that he did in that place to include escorting hookers in and out of his suites, having bomb dogs check things because he was so paranoid that people were going to try to kill him, and just random, like, this room has to be at 68 degrees temperature on game day, and every engineer in the place would come down to the room with temperatures, measuring if Tom Gores had it at the right temperature. Weird stuff. It goes on. The list could go on. I used to collect it. I thought this could be amazing if I released this to the press, but I never did. So anyways, toxic environment. I've seen him walk people out before for like less than this. And it's embarrassing when they do. And you don't want that because your career is like in pro sports is kind of over and you're going to have a hard time recovering. So I'm sitting there contemplating this and thinking about my wife at home who's pregnant. And I said, okay, let's do this. And at the time, I had moved back from Italy to New York and then New York to Detroit. And I was living close to my family, but my means were pretty low. And so we only had one car. My wife would drive me to work, and then she wasn't working because she was pregnant. Or sometimes she would just stay home all day. We only had one car. And on this day, my wife had driven me to work and dropped me off. So we go out into the parking lot. He tells me where we're going to meet. He goes, we should do this off campus. I go, okay. This guy had premeditated this, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. I think he may have. He goes, because we were at each other all the time. There was so much tension. He goes, meet me at this place. I go, I don't have a car. He's like, you got to be kidding. So I get in his car to go to our own.
He gave you a ride to your fight.
I get in his car to go to our fight. So I'm in his car together, sitting and talking to him and trying to talk him down. And he's like, you're not talking me down. We're not stopping. I'm like, all right, dude, well, let's just try to have a conversation. And by the time I was there, in the parking lot, I kind of had thought, like, this isn't real. This guy can't. I have to, like, work myself up into a frenzy to be angry enough to fist fight somebody. I can't just do it for the sake of doing it. I'm like, this can't be real. And I felt a little bit like the movie Brother, Where Art Thou with George Clooney, right? And George Clooney is rolling up his sleeves, and the other guy's going, "Are you bona fide? Are you not bona fide?" I don't know if you remember that scene, but they have a fist fight. So it felt a little bit like that. So I'm rolling my sleeves up, and he's on the other side of the car, and we're getting out, and I'm walking around to him, and I go, "What are the rules?" He's like, "Just don't tear my shirt."
Yeah, this is a stupid rule.
It's not a real fight. Don't tear my shirt. And the next thing you know, this guy just starts throwing haymakers. And one thing leads to another. We go a couple rounds, and then he lands one right on my nose, breaks my nose sideways, and that kind of ends it. You get blood just gushing out everywhere. And at that point, it was like it was over. And I went home to my wife, and I remember sitting on the step.
First, he drove you back to the office.
He drove me. I got in his car. That's so true. I got in his car, and he drove me to my wife. Oh my God, this story is so insane. He drove me to my wife. I sat on the steps and walked out. And she's like, "What happened?" She thought I was fired. She thought it was over. And this is, and this speaks to, this kind of brings full circle a little bit of the story of my wife and the woman that I chose, and my intuition at some level, and my good fortune. And she just kind of put her hand around me and said, "We'll work through it. We'll work it out." And in any case, I cracked my nose back in the mirror, and I threw some ice on it. It wasn't the first time I'd broken my nose. I've been in different fights, boxing. The next day, I went back to work, and I said nothing for years until after I left the place. And then I shared this privately with a few people I've worked with, but that was, so I don't know how I got on that, but that was about the Pistons. That was working with the Pistons, and that was pro sports. And it's in pro sports, I found to just be a brutally competitive environment, and that's kind of a small anecdote of just how brutal and competitive it is.
Did you go to work with? Did you go to work with Bill Lambier's face plate on, his face mask?
And that's the other thing is I was very much initiated and kind of like hazed and brought into the bad boy culture for sure. I probably should have, but I did get to meet, in my time there, that was one of the highlights. I got to meet Bill Lambier, Rick Mahorn, Isaiah Thomas. I didn't shake John Sally's hand, but I was at an event with him, and the list goes on. So I did get to have that moment.
What about Dennis Rodman? Did you meet Carmen Electra?
I know, unfortunately, Rodman never came. We had the 25th anniversary of the Bad Boys Championship while I was there. And that's how I got to meet all these guys, because they all came through. And unfortunately, and Joe Dumars included.
Sure.
Who used to guard Jordan. But Rodman never showed.
Well, he was maybe still getting over Carmen Electra. No, I mean, Rodman, I want him to say he was still doing the NWO, but that had ended probably 14 years earlier. But this is my second interview in a row in real time, whether they drop in real time near each other, I'm not sure, it had references to both Dennis Rodman and Carmen Electra, because one of my interviews with the woman who's probably most famous for being one of the Nitro girls who escorted the NWO and then was gifted to Big Papa Pump, the genetic freak Scott Steiner at some point. Anyway, so nothing. At the end of that.
I'm tracking right with you, because I kept tabs on those guys, and Rodman, and who knows that guy? He may have been over there with. Remember, he was going over to North Korea. North Korea,
that's right. Maybe he's still there.
He may have been in North Korea for all I know. I don't think Carmen made it quite that far. I think she got dropped off at the stop before that.
Yeah, I'm sure she wasn't going there. All right. What I don't know is, I sort of know, but what are you doing now? I mean, you got home, you were able to publish, finally finish and make some of your documentaries. They were well received. They're on Amazon Prime. You've got 4 of them, if I'm not mistaken. Won an Emmy for one. So must be doing. Obviously your call sign there says Endless Media. Your email says Endless Media. You told me you started a company. I'm guessing it's called Endless Media. What are you doing these days?
Yeah, no, I mean, I am running a video marketing and production company, and I do have total of 7 documentaries. I think it's up 4 now on Amazon Prime. Recently, I published one about a individual who biked across the country from from San Francisco to Chesapeake Bay, and he got caught in a flash flood, and he got pushed off the route. We had to get off the route because of the California fires, and there was a lot of other drama, and then just like a snapshot of America. I had been interviewing people from coast to coast along the route, interviewing Americans, and it was a snapshot of America 2021 post pandemic, post the January 6th kind of insurrection, as they call it, and kind of that period. And I just wanted to know where Americans stood, and I think it was very reflective. I think had our politicians watched my film, they may have, they would. I think Trump had his finger on the pulse, but I think the Democrat Party may have gotten a better pulse of what's going on, because I feel like it was a snapshot of what America was feeling and still is. But I think it's a fascinating piece. So that's out, and then I have 3 pieces that are on YouTube that I did, and one's called Empty America. During COVID, I packed up my gear and drove around the country. I drove from Detroit, Michigan, out to Los Angeles, Las Vegas, across the West and across the Midwest, through Oklahoma City and Wyoming and Minneapolis and Chicago, and ending in not directly in this linear order, but ending in New York and DC. And I filmed all these cities empty, void of people. And in the process, I started picking up sound bites from the radio, from all different channels, primarily AM radio, because I thought it was fascinating. I'd get these like old people calling in, our lovely politicians, blah blah blah, and they'd be talking. I just thought it was fascinating. I published that. It won 17 Best Documentary Shorts, and now I'm writing a book about the experience. So I'm working on my second book.
So you still have the wanderlust. You still like to pack up and do something. You just have a bank account now.
I have a family. But fortunately, my work does take me out. I recently was in New Hampshire and Detroit working on a documentary with an Olympic snowboarder by the name of Jake Vedder that we're doing for the brand of Milk. Milk means more. And that series is going to drop in the next 4 to 6 months. So my work does at times take me on fun, exciting voyages like that. My brain functions best in that environment. It's alive. And then I come back here and I'm like, what am I doing with my life? But it's funny. But yeah, so that's kind of a summary of what's going on with me, and a few of the things that I'm excited about.
Excellent. All right. So I'm going to reverse things. I have an unintended gotcha question, but it's always a gotcha question. I don't know why. Obviously the people don't listen to my show, so they're not prepared for it. But if there is a song that you connect or think of when you're thinking about your story or where you are, just that's in your head right now, to be the outro, what would that be? Now, just because I love to talk about me, because it's my show, so I will. I was thinking Wanderlust, but I also get a little bit of, I forgot her name, but she played like one of the Tuscadero sisters, and Stumbling In. So if I could do a mash of those, but I can't. So guest privilege, is there a song that you associate with your adventures?
Well, as soon as you said that, I just grabbed onto the first song that came to my head, and it was a song that played in Donnie Brasco. Okay. And I think I'll probably screw up the title, but the words are in it are "Ooh, got you, baby." Do you know that song?
I'm afraid not.
Like a 1970s song. Let me see if I can. Let me make best use of our time. Let me see if I can dig this up on ChatGPT. Gotcha, baby song in Donnie.
Let's see if I can find it before you do.
The beauty of the AI age was ChatGPT. It is called Gotcha, and it's by Tommy James and the Shondells.
I know them. Dragging the Line.
Yeah, is that it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here. Let me see if I can. You probably can't hear this song. I guess we don't.
It's all right. I know the song. Don't worry. It is called Gotcha.
Dragging the Line. Yes. Yeah. You're right. Dragging the Line.
They also did Crystal Blues Persuasion, the Monet, others as well. Crimson and Clover.
Oh my God. Crimson and Clover was such a big song for me in college. And I mentioned in the book my college sweetheart, and that was kind of, and I say this respectively because I caught the big fish. I'm so happy with my wife, but I did have a story and a moment about my college sweetheart, and the song that we used to have was Crimson and Clover.
Oh yeah, I know that one. The weird thing is I'm finding a bunch of Tommy James songs, but Gotcha, I'm finding one from Johnny Tex, I think. I wonder if that's not the same thing. It might have to be closer.
I'm also a big fan of OAR. On the Black Rock, it's where I want to go after the long night coming home from the show. That's where on my time, on the black. Do you know the OAR? Or
I only know one song, and that's Shattered.
We used to listen to that when we would cruise down into Mexico. That was our song. On the Black Rock. Those songs. I love those songs. I cherish those songs.
No, let's see if I can find something Black Rock. Let's see if that works. Yep, yeah, OAR Black Rock, sure. Yeah, that one I can find.
Black Rock, where I want to go after a long night coming home from the show.
I got it. I have it. That one I found. Yeah. So that's what we're going to hear. All right. So is there anything that you wanted to promote or plug, or if you want people to find and follow you, how would they do so?
Yeah, well, my website, endlessmediame.com. There's also Endless Media 1, not to confuse people, but the number 1. Both URLs will go to my site. And on that site, you can find my book. You can find all my documentaries. You can find reels to my work. And so I think that's the best resource for how to find everything that I discussed in this show. Although you can Google search all the titles that I've dropped earlier in this show. And The High, Ultra High, Reaching Reality, Crossing Lines, all movies on Prime. And then my book, The Unknown Adventurer, is also on Amazon and in Walmart and Barnes & Nobles. And so, yeah, I mean, and reach out if you watch this show and you enjoyed it. You find our email on endlessmediame.com. Feel free to send me an email and share your thoughts. I'm always intrigued. I'm not famous enough that it matters because it might only be one email. If you drop something like that when you're, Joe Rogan famous, you're going to get in trouble. But I might get one or two. Who knows? Maybe this show will have a lot more than that. I probably should be careful what I say.
Well, the picture on the back of the book, by the way, The Unknown Adventurer, so just one more time on that, you had a familiar face. I'm like, I feel like I've seen your face before. Now, you've aged differently. Like you look sort of like almost like a news anchor now. Here, you look like Al Bundy if things went right. As opposed to Al Bundy when things went sort of wrong.
You're very, yeah. No, I mean you're kind. I mean it's funny. Aging. It's funny what aging does to you, man. I'm not a fan of it, but I don't have a choice.
No.
I've had some good years. I was far more handsome than I am now. Fortunately I settled down with my wife before it was too late.
There you go. That's the way to go. That's the smart thing. See, I just got tremendously lucky. I've had my share of luck too, but after a bunch of my own misadventures, which are less sexy than yours, I got tremendously lucky in my second marriage. Not to disparage anyone before that. It's just outkicked my coverage in a lot of ways, especially since I had like nothing to offer. All right.
I like outkicked my coverage. I like that.
Yeah. It's if only so. We've already gone an hour, so I'm going to tell my little story now. So one of the shows I do, and I didn't plug my show, so I might as well do, is I do a show called GOT, because Garden of Thought presents, and depending on who my co-host is, it's either the Book of Black or the Gospel of Thomas. And that's because one of my co-hosts is PJ Black, the other is Mr. Thomas. They are both professional wrestlers. PJ has been a wrestler for 26 years. He was Justin Gabriel in WWE for 5 years. Mr. Thomas is Mr. Thomas. He's had other names depending on the promotion he's been in. And so we were interviewing a wrestler named Zicky Dice, like you roll dice Zicky, with a Z, like Dicky, but with a Z. And the tech genius that I am ran out of disk space. So I'm sure it's like my regular disk. No, as it turns, it's Zoom. My Zoom is full because I had thought that they automatically delete it after 30 days. But I guess when I upgrade to business Zoom, not so much. They keep them forever. And so I have to call in my tech support, which is my wife. And she comes in and she does it. And then she gets up and leaves, and I sit back down and I see the look on their faces. And I'm like, yes, guys, I've seen that look before. I know what you're saying. And Mr. Thomas just goes, wow. And Zicky Dice goes, big pop. So it's like I'm used to people with the shock and awe of what this paunchy, pasty, 5'10", not particularly successful lawyer / podcaster has achieved. So anyway, of course, on the show about you, we end with about me, because I'm selfish. No, it was really a pleasure talking to you. A fun conversation. I hope we did justice to your story without giving away too much of the book. I'm overly conscious about that. You don't seem to be. You're really more focused on the larger message of don't give up, trust your instincts, keep on going forward. But me being more linear, though you can't tell here, is like, I don't want to tell the guy's story. I mean, they need to read it. They need to read his story. So, but thank you for being a trooper, and thank you for agreeing not to prep. I hate doing, prepping and scripting talks because I would never get breaking news about you losing a fight at work. If we scripted this.
I did lost. That was painful, and I did lost.
I was hoping you'd win. I was hoping you could tell me you're like 6'4" and your reach was just.
I know, man. I wish that I had a good hit in there, but this guy was 6'6", and man, did he have a whopper! I don't know where that. I had him right in the chin, and I had my sights in. All of a sudden, next thing I know, I had blood everywhere.
Who fights someone who's 6'6"?
I don't know. Not anyone that has.
Unless you're 6'8.5".
Let's just say this much. Years before, my brother had warned me not to mess with guys because someday, Barry, you're going to meet your match. And for the most part, I'd won a lot of fights and had my share of fights. I think I met my match. Well,
welcome to middle age. It was probably for the best.
Yeah, it was. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a good segue.
You don't want to be undefeated into middle age and thinking you should still be getting into fights. So it's probably again the luckiest unlucky guy.
It was, and indeed, it was my entry into middle age because I was 39. I was on the cusp, after that, I was like, never again.
Jack Benny age, exactly right. That's going to be when someone writes a book, I make the title show the title of their book. But audience, let it be known that I want to make the show title "The Luckiest Unlucky Guy," but I can't do that. I'm going to make it the title of the book.
You can. I give you. Listen, I'm happy with you. I'll give you carte blanche if that's the right term. I think you should go with what you think the audience is going to eat up, and that might be it. I don't think we need to push the book that hard. And frankly, I think we did a great job of skating on the book. It's 60 some, maybe 70 some pages. Lots of stuff in there. We've only
and pictures. There's pictures too. So listen, if you're afraid of reading, there's also pictures that help you break things up. And the last picture, by the way,
I needed the pictures for me. That's I'm basically a picture book guy.
Well, the last picture is, despite you talking about how you weren't a great student, especially as a young man, the last picture and the last page of the book, aside from even including about the author, is you won first prize for a story that you wrote when you were in grade school. So yeah, you started with a gold star. You just didn't realize it. You're ending with a gold star. You get a gold star for this. And there we go. That's it, folks. We're done here. Please subscribe to Garden of Thought. You get 3 shows. Please rate and review. Buy his book. Check out those docuseries on Amazon Prime. Check out the YouTube stuff. And otherwise follow Barry Walton. Interesting guy. And obviously willing to talk. So thank you again, Barry, and good luck and everything, and feel free to keep in touch.
This was awesome. Thank you.
solution rise. One solution, one takes you beyond this love. Am I far I lead? love.